Hi everyone. Today we're going to take a look at the matrix object. It's a way to make a fully customizable mixer in Max MSP. You've already started playing around a little bit with these plugins. The matrix object is a great way to control whatever your incoming signal is, route it to different places, and then later we're going to look at ways of manipulating the signal in more interesting ways. So we're going to have, for now, just an audio file. I like this Duduk file because it's just a monophonic. So we have our input. This is just going to mimic the layout of a normal mixer. We're going to have our matrix objects that is going to eventually route that signal to different places. Then we're going to have some effects. Then master gain object right here, and then an output, the easy DAC. Normally on a mixer this is all laid out left to right. In this case we're just going to go top to bottom. These effects can be whatever you want. You can have as many of them as you like. I'm not going to get into the details of messing with the parameters of the effects. I'll leave that to you depending on what you want to do. All I want to talk about is routing the signal, taking whatever your input is and sending it to different effects. So using the matrix tilde object, we're going to be able to take that signal and send it to different outputs. The first argument here is the number of inlets. Currently we only have one incoming signal, just to keep things simple. Of course, if you have a piece for 4 instruments, you're going to want probably 4 inlets. If you have like 10 audio files that you're going to be manipulating, you want 10 inlets. For now, we're keeping it simple, just one inlet, one incoming signal. And let's say we're going to route that to 4 different places. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger just so we can see what's happening. So our incoming signal is going to go in here. I'd just like to show how this works. We're just going to put a little meter so that you can see the motion of the signal. And each of these outlets, as you can see, are signal patch cords. So we're going to then create a matrix control, matrix CTRL. It looks like a preset object, but it's not. It's a series of columns and rows, little buttons that you can interact with. Each row, each horizontal line right here, corresponds to one of the outlets. Each column, right here, corresponds to one of the inlets. So we only have one inlet. We're only going to be using this column right here. We have 4 outlets, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I were to turn this on, if I were to turn audio on, play our file, we're just going to loop this. Currently we have no signals coming through because there's nothing clicked here. If you click on this one, signal will come in out of the first outlet. Turn it off. Second outlet, third, and fourth. You can have it going out of multiple places at once, just with a click of a button. You can already see how useful this is going to be, right? You don't have to be sort of scattering your effects down here and then adjusting the gains and messing with things in real time. You can have everything set up, ready to go down here. And then when you want a certain effect, just click wherever you need to, and it'll immediately send that signal to that effect. Okay. Again, because we only have, if we click on the second or third, whatever, columns right here, nothing comes through because we only have one inlet at the moment. You know, let's just test it out just to demonstrate. What if we do, for example, I like the Goldberg variations. We'll make this big again. And we'll loop that continuously. So now, if I were to click on 2, we hear the Goldberg variations. Turn that off. Here's the Duduk audio sample, right? So this is this file right here. This column is this file. This row is this outlet. This row is this outlet, etc., etc. So let's start putting some, I'll leave these meters here just so we know what's going on. Let's add a couple effects and start experimenting a little bit. Let's make the first one just a delay. Really simple delay line. You can of course create your own effects. You can do whatever you want here. This is actually the sort of bulk of the work we're going to be doing in the class, and this is where the creativity happens. But in order to execute these things and organize your patch properly, I think this matrix tilde object is going to be really important. So just a simple delay. Okay. Let's make the second effect maybe like a pitch shift. No pitch is nice because it's a very simple just pitch shift object. Pretty straightforward. When the pitch scale is at 0, it doesn't pitch shift anything at all. So now, for example, we can have the duduk going through the delay line and the Goldberg variation through the pitch shift, or both. You can see how versatile this is. We're hearing a little bit of clicking. I'll address that in just a second. I'll show you how to get rid of that. Let's just finish adding some of the effects right here. I like this tremolo. Let me unlock. Plug in. It's kind of fun to mess around with. It's just kind of in a like a AM. It's controlling the amplitude based on this. So we currently just have delay and tremolo. And let's do a reverb at the end, just to keep things a little bit simple. Oh, I always forget to unlock. Reverb. And that's it. The reason I'm kind of checkerboarding these is just to keep things lined up vertically. So I know exactly this is my first signal path. This is the second, third, and the fourth. And I'm connecting everything to the same master gain. I think it's important to have one volume, one gain control at the end of where all the signals are combined. And here's the reverb. Let's make it all fully wet. Okay, so a little delay and reverb. Tremolo. Very nice. So of course, depending on the effects and the blending and the number of inputs, this can be either really simple or really complex. Now, as I mentioned before, we have a little bit of clicking. I think it's more audible with the first audio file. You hear that little... the reason this happens is because the signal goes almost immediately from 0 to 1, or to sort of a high amplitude. If you turn this on when the sample is loud. And the best way to deal with this, the matrix object has some really versatile usability that we can implement. So before we talk about dealing with those clicks, this has the feature. Right now, all we're doing is routing. We have sort of a binary system, whether the signal is going in or not. We have, at the moment, no way of controlling the level, how much of the signal is going in here, or in here, or in here, or in here. We can kind of do that with the effects, with gain, if they have like a gain or dry wet mix, but that's actually the level of the effect itself, not the signal coming into the effect. So one of the really wonderful features of the matrix object is that you can control how much of the signal is coming through here. And in order to do that, let's take a closer look at this matrix control. I'm going to create a message box. I'm going to send the outlet of this into the right inlet of the message box. And if I click on this, you can see that the argument here is 001. If I turn it off, it's 000. These things correspond to, these three numbers correspond to the column, row, and whether it's on, off. Those are the arguments that the matrix control object generates, and those are the same arguments that matrix basically interprets. So when we click on this, I'll do this one, 021, 01 is on. Let me turn the volume down and just demonstrate a little bit of the logic behind this. So in this case, column 0, which is this one, row 0, which is this one, is on. So this is a 001. If you were to send the matrix object a message that says 001, it would do the exact same thing as clicking on this thing, on the matrix control. If we send it a message that says 011, column 0, row 1 is on, so it sends it out of here. This is very, very important logic to understand. When in doubt, just connect the output of the matrix control into the right inlet of a message, and you'll be able to see exactly what's going on. Column number 0, row number 2, 0, 1, 2 is on. On is indicated by 1, off is indicated by 0. Column 0, row 3 is on and is off. Column 1, row 3, 131, 121. Okay, does that make sense? You can't really answer me, but I hope it does, and if it doesn't, either post a question here on YouTube or in Canvas, or rewind the video and kind of review that. It's very, very important. Now, the most interesting thing for me about this matrix object, we can give it a third argument. If you give it a float as a third argument, this allows you to send it to control how much of the signal is being sent through. So just to demonstrate, we remember this is actually, maybe I'll do it on the new pitch effect so we can hear a little more clearly. This is 0, 1, and then the 1 indicates that the signal is being passed through here. If we were to send this matrix tilde object a message of 0, 1 with a variable, and then replace that variable with a float between 0 and 1, right now it's receiving column 0, row 1, is off. It's receiving a 0. Let's turn this volume up so you can hear what's going on. If we fade in, so this can behave exactly like a mixer. We can either just click on this button to send the full signal all the way through, or if you give matrix tilde a third argument that is a float, it gives it the option of ramping between these values. It's very, very powerful, incredibly versatile object. So let's just organize this a little bit. We have our 2 audio samples. Let me move everything down. And let's create a little mixer up here. So let's create a 0. First thing we want to do, let's create a little mixer just for this audio file, the duduk. So we have 001. The row number 0, column number 0, and then a float to indicate how much of that signal we're letting through. This is the second. Here's the third. And the fourth effect. I know sometimes it's a little bit of, it can be a little bit difficult to follow the logic, but what you have to just remember is right now all we're doing is routing one incoming signal to 4 different places. And instead of just routing and kind of opening the gate and saying, yes, you can pass, or no, you can't, we're trying to determine how much of that signal we're letting through. So here we have only a little bit of the signal going in here. We have even less going in here. We have all of it going into the reverb and a little bit into the delay. So it's a much more subtle effect than only clicking the buttons in a matrix control object. Now let's control those with sliders, slightly more intuitive. We'll use a slider, not a gain object. And as you probably know by now, this the output of the slider, I believe, is between 0 and 127 maybe? Yep, exactly. So we want to scale that between 0 and 1. You can of course use the scale object, or more efficiently you can just divide it by 127. And so 127 divided by 127 is 1. That means that at its top, at its peak, it'll output a 1. 127 divided by numbers less than 127 will gradually ramp down to 0. We want to make this a float, of course. So just by duplicating this, I get a weird patch cord here. Duplicating this a few times, we now have a mixer that controls how much of our first input goes to each of these effects. And if you wanted to do the same for the Goldberg, you would just replace the first 0, which is this column, with a 1. And it's that simple. So this would be 1. 1. 1, 2, $1. actually made a mistake. This is a 3. Should be a 3. Excellent. And again, a little trick: if you need to connect multiple objects to one inlet, go from the inlet and hold Shift, and you can and there you go. That's basically a fully customizable mixing board where you can very, very quickly and easily route signals to multiple different places. The last thing I wanted to talk about again was this issue with the clipping. We can still use the matrix control. By adding this third argument, it greatly reduces the clipping. But if we're still getting some clipping, you want to add a final argument at ramp, and then give this a value of maybe 50 or 75 milliseconds. And all that does is it tells the matrix object to ramp between signals over 75 milliseconds. And this will basically reduce all clipping, most clipping that you hear. This helps a lot, just adding this third argument, but this is kind of a more of a fail-safe, and it's explicitly controlling the crossfading between these different signals. So there you go. You can of course experiment with as many inputs and as many outputs as you want. At the moment, we basically have just one effect per channel, and later we're going to look at a few different ways of combining effects in chain, in sequence, and sort of reorganizing and rerouting things a little bit more complex, in a little bit more of a complex way. But I'd like for you to just get really familiar with the matrix tilde object. Very, very important. And just experiment with the plugins, or of course the examples up here that you enjoy, that you like, that really speak to you, and try to integrate them into a more organized patch where you have a very, very clear understanding of how the signal is moving through the patch. Okay. If you have any questions, please let me know, and have fun. Enjoy it.